Hello and welcome guys, and welcome to part 1 of this audit marathon. And yes, in this marathon we are going to cover all the major topics of CMA Inter paper number 12 of audit. Guys, one very important thing which you need to take care of is that the extent to which the syllabus is there for audit as compared to other professional courses is very different in CMA. So you cannot afford to refer to any book of any other professional course like CA or CS for studying for audit of CMA. So in some other professional courses, the extent of coverage is too vast as compared to CMA, and some other courses the coverage is too less. You have to study perfectly as per the syllabus prescribed by the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. Therefore, my earnest endeavor and request to you is please study the Institute's study material. What I have done is I have, based on the institute study material, I have developed this study material in which I have catered to the specific requirements of CMA Inter students, and you will find this study material exactly based on the module of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India for CMA Inter audit. So let's start the first chapter, auditing concepts and types of audit. So first of all, what was evolution of audit? What was need of audit? And you must be aware that audit means checking, it means verification, it means scrutiny, it means to verify certain facts and to make a report. That is a broad framework which is audit. So a very simple example if I give you, then your mom asks you to fetch some groceries from the nearby shop, and your mom gives you 500 rupees, and she gives you a list of the groceries, whatever is required to be fetched from the supermarket. You bring those groceries to your mom, and your mom asks you for the balance change. You give your mom 200 rupees back, which means 300 rupees have been spent. Now your mom asks you for an invoice, and the invoice is only for 250 rupees. So your mom asks you, the invoice is only for 250 rupees. Whatever the balance change which you have given back to me is 200 rupees. Mom asks you, where is the balance 50 rupees gone? You tell your mom that, mom, on my way to home, I found a good ice cream parlor, and I went to the ice cream parlor and ate an ice cream for 50 rupees. Your mom asks you, please give me the invoice for that ice cream of 50 rupees. You pull out that invoice from your pocket very hesitantly and hand it over to your mom. And then your mom is satisfied that yes, the expenses are incurred appropriately. This entire process is nothing but audit. This is what auditor does in any company. Auditor will ask you, what kind of expenses have you incurred? What revenues have you earned? What debtors and creditors are there in your balance sheet? And auditor is going to verify from documentary evidence, because verbal evidence is no evidence. So documentary evidence, he will be verifying your claims, whatever claim you've done, and that is audit. So audit is nothing but a verification, a checking, a scrutiny, investigation into the books of accounts of a company, be it financial books or cost books or secretarial books or GST books, any books, and that is known as audit. So in earlier days, there was no concept of auditing, because in earlier days, the businesses were very small. In a small business, you don't need audit, because the owner of the business is directly supervising your work, and he is directly looking at each and every expenditure which has happened or incurred in an organization. So there's no need of audit. In earlier organization where there are small organizations, so the need of audit was not felt because of the two following reasons. Number one, nature of businesses were small. They were very small businesses. Secondly, day-to-day operations were personally controlled by the proprietor itself. When control was done by the proprietor itself, then there was no need of audit. Audit evolved after Industrial Revolution in 18th century due to the following reason. What was the reasons for evolution of audit? Due to, number one, large scale of business organizations. When there are large businesses which are catering to different needs of the consumers, then there is requirement of an audit, because the proprietor cannot go into each and every element of the organization and personally supervise each and every activity. Then dilution in control of proprietor. Proprietor dilutes its controls, and proprietor cannot be present everywhere. So there was a need of audit. Then there was a divorce of management and ownership. So in a company setup, the shareholders are different people and the people who are managing are different. Solomon versus Solomon is a classic case where it was held that the identity of your shareholders are different and that of your board of directors are different, and board of directors are entrusted with the activity of only and only supervising the day-to-day activities, and the ownership is in the hands of the shareholders. Shareholders cannot interfere with the workings of the board of directors. So when divorce happened between the shareholders and the board of directors, then there was a dire need for the shareholders to have a grip over the entire financial statements, and that grip could not come unless and until a person from the shareholder, appointed by the shareholder, could come inside the company and supervise and overview the entire functioning of the organization. So this was one of the reasons for evolution of audit. Then transactions being recorded by staff or representatives of owners. The transactions were not recorded by the owners itself, it was recorded by their representatives. So there was a need to supervise them, because chances of errors, chances of mistake was quite high. Then need was felt for audit of public accounts. Public accounts means government organizations where public money is involved. The need was felt for those accounts. In India, auditing has evolved step by step, and it was not a one-day affair that one fine day Institute of Chartered Accountants of India evolved and they gave you the standards of auditing. No, that it was not a one-day affair. The evolution dated back to 1857 when Joint Stock Companies Act introduced audit. Then it was enhanced by Companies Act 1913. Then it was replaced by 1956 and 2013 Act, which have introduced statutory audit, which is to be mandatorily done by a chartered accountant. Then came our role, yes, cost accountant's role. Cost audit was introduced in 1965, which was mandatorily to be done by a cost accountant in practice, and yes, cost audit was evolved. Then tax audit happened. Income Tax Act was amended, and a need was felt for an audit which was specifically testing the income tax activities. Only the transactions which are related to income tax are tested in this particular audit. So the focus of every audit is different. So for example, your mom, when your mom is testing your expenses, then her focus is on the money which has come back to her, and whether you have spent the money and calculated everything properly or not. In the evening, your father comes home and he asks you, what did you do during the entire day, and you tell the entire story. His focus might not be on money. His focus might be on, why did you have ice cream? Because your ice cream is bad for your throat and you would fall ill. So focus of your father might be slightly different from focus of your mother. So your father will audit in a different manner and mother will audit in a different manner. Similarly, Companies Act focus is on Companies Act compliance. So statutory audit will happen in a different manner, and income tax audit happens in a different manner, because the focus is on income tax avoiding transactions. So that is why different kind of audits evolved in India over time. Then there was sales tax audit, cooperative society audit, trust tax audit, valuation audit, section 14A of central excise. Although central excise has been curtailed to a very large extent. Valuation and SENVAT. Then CAG audit, which is Government of India audit. If any organization is held by Government of India or its representatives, then CAG would come into picture, and this was the CAG audit. Then GST audit, section 35(5). GST audit also came into play in India, and this is how the history of audit evolved in India. And trust me, in any other country, in any other part of the world, audit has evolved in a similar fashion. It generated, or it was, the need was felt in early 1800, and it evolved since then, and since then audit has become stronger and stronger, and every area is now impacted by audit, and audit is done for every area. You cannot even imagine what kind of areas are covered under audit these days. So right from electricity audit, efficiency audit, energy audit, social audit, whether you are performing your corporate social responsibility appropriately or not, any and every kind of audit with a different perspective has been evolved. Now comes the moot point. What is the definition of audit? So guys, audit has been derived from a Latin word audire. Audire means to listen. So in earlier days, there was no concept of documentation. So an auditor used to give his opinion only on the basis of what he used to hear from the peasants or the court marshals or the people who were present in the court. And in the ancient days, the persons appointed to check accounts used to hear the explanations required from responsible officers, and that's why the person who heard the explanation was called the auditor. Now you have to remember certain essays because they are important essays, and essay 200 is very very important. So what do you mean by an essay? Essay means standard on auditing. So instead of Chartered Accountants of India, yes, CA Institute have developed certain auditing standards whereby certain rules and regulations have been drafted on how to conduct an audit, and they are drafted under standards of auditing. Guys, we don't have standards of auditing in depth in our syllabus for CMA Inter Audit, so please do not study them in depth. I will refer to certain essays, and I've given a list of essays in my book which I'll share with you guys also, and only those essays names should be remembered. That's it. No details are required for those essays, only names are required to be mentioned in the answers. We do not have detailed description of essays in our syllabus for CMA Inter. Please do not study essays in great detail, only names are required to be studied. Alright guys, so basic principles governing an audit. Essay 200 tells us what are the principles which are governing an audit, and audit may be defined as, now the technical definition of audit. Please remember the bold highlighted words very very carefully. It is an independent examination. What do you mean by word independent? Independent means free from influence or bias. So it is an independent examination, which means your opinion should not be, your examination should not be influenced or pressurized by someone else, especially the management of the company. It is an independent examination of what? Of the financial statements. Of course, in case of cost audit, it is the examination of cost records. In case of income tax audit, it is the examination of income tax records. In case of GST audit, it is the independent examination of GST records, so on and so forth. Of any entity. Now it is very very important that any and every entity can come into perspective of audit. So be it profit making or non-profit making. Sir, but non-profit organization are not making profit. What is the need of getting them audited? Of course there's a dire need to get them audited, because we want to know where are they employing their funds, because their funds come from donations. Their funds come from trusts, and public money is involved over there. So we need to know whether their money is being deployed in the correct manner or not, expenditure are being incurred in the correct manner or not. Whether large or small, even small organization would need audit. So for any entity with an objective to express an opinion. Now the objective of audit is to express an opinion. My responsibility is to give an opinion whether my financial statements of the company are absolutely correct, whether they are following the law, the relevant law, whether the compliance of law is taking place or not. So I need to really study and do audit from a perspective of giving an opinion. I am just a person who's giving an opinion. That is the purpose of audit. So let's highlight and let's recapitulate the important words. It is an independent examination. Number 2, of financial statements. Number 3, of any entity, whether it is large or small, profit generating, non-profit generating, with an objective of expressing an opinion. So 4 important things: independent examination, of financial statements, of any entity, to express an opinion. These are the 4 words, keywords, which you need to remember. Rest you can create yourself and you can use your language, but these 4 words are to be mentioned in your examination for audit definition. All right, sir, got it. So what are the ingredients of audit? What do you involve in audit, and how do you do audit, and what are the key elements which you need to remember while doing audit? Number 1, it has to be an intelligent examination. Intelligent means you have to apply your brain. It cannot be a routine exercise. It cannot be just a monotonous exercise which is just done for formality's sake. No, it has to be intelligent examination, which means a person of intelligence of level of a cost accountant or chartered accountant should apply his mind while doing audit. That is the prime requirement of an audit. It is an intelligent, that is application of logical rationale and reasoning. And it is a critical examination. Critical means in depth. You cannot check everything upar say and just give a broad view. You cannot do that. You have to be very very critical. You have to analyze the entire financial statements in depth. You have to go in depth of each and every point. You have to really study the transactions very carefully, and you have to bring out the deficiencies in the transactions. It is done by an independent person. Now, very important thing, guys, auditor cannot be dependent. Auditor's mind has to be free from bias. So auditor, while giving his opinion, should not have taken loan from the company. We'll be studying it in company audit, but I'm just giving an example. During preparing an audit statement, the auditor should not have a loan from the company. It should not be so that auditor has some loan from the company, because if auditor has some loan from the company, then he has some obligation to pay. And if he has some obligation to pay, he would not be free from stress. He would not be free from mental bias. He would be mentally biased towards the company, and he might not be able to express his opinion, be it adverse or be it normal, comfortably. So to be in a comfortable position, auditor has to be free from biases. Auditor has to be free from any dependence or free from any influence that management might exercise. So independence. Number two, qualified. He has to be qualified. Any Tom, Dick and Harry cannot conduct an audit. There are statutory provisions that you have to be a professional to conduct an audit. You have to be a qualified professional containing a certificate of practice to conduct an audit. So qualification is the key importance. Audit is done through documentation like vouchers, information, explanation. So you have to do an audit using documents. You cannot just be in your ancient time and just listen to what management has to say and just do audit on that basis. No, you have to do it on the basis of documents. You have to have substantiating evidence. Your mom would ask you for invoices. She would not believe you whatever you are saying. No, she wants invoices. Similarly, auditors wants invoices. Auditors wants vouchers. So what is this voucher? We'll discuss the voucher in our subsequent chapters. But this is a kind of document which is given to the auditor as a proof for a particular transaction. So auditor requires proof. Auditor requires information. Auditor requires explanation. Then auditors satisfies himself with authenticity of the financial accounts. Auditor has to satisfy himself. To give an opinion, he has to satisfy himself that the accounts are prepared well and the accounts are prepared in the best possible manner, following the legal regulations which are there. Legal regulations means Ind AS might be there applicable for the company. Companies Act suggests a lot of things. Instead of chartered accountants have given guidance notes on how to prepare accounts. All those should be followed and auditor should take care of it. Then balance sheet should give a true and fair view. Profit and loss account should give a true and fair view. Accounts are in conformity with concerned law. These are the ingredients of audit. And if auditor is not satisfied, he means auditors. If he is not satisfied, then he will report that he is not satisfied. Whatever element he is not satisfied with, he has to tell that he is not satisfied with this particular element. So for example, in your case, if your mom asks you where is the 50 rupees gone, then you will say, sir, mom, I ate ice cream from that 50 rupees. You pull out invoice and give it to your mom, and that invoice contains only 40 rupees of ice cream. Then where are the 10 rupees gone? So mom will express an opinion over there that okay, 40 rupees is perfect, but where is those 10 rupees gone? What did you do of those 10 rupees? I am unable to comprehend. So mom will threaten you. Mom will say, I will report loss of this 10 rupees to your father. If you do not want me to report loss of 10 rupees to your father, please give me an explanation and documentation for rupees 10 also. This is how auditor expresses an opinion if he is not satisfied with particular thing which has not happened in the correct way, or if he is not able to get the right explanation for a particular transaction. Then what are the features of auditing? Features of auditing, very important feature of auditing is that the evidence which is collected should be relevant, reliable and adequate. These are the three words used for evidence. Audit is based on evidence. Number one, audit, the foremost feature of audit is evidence. Audit is not based on hearsay. Audit is not based on what you think, what you feel. No, it's based on evidence. Emotions are useless in audit. Words, commitments are useless in audit. What is useful in audit is evidence. You need evidence for everything. You need documentation for everything. And evidence should contain three important ingredients. Number one, relevance. It has to be relevant. Your mom is asking you for receipts of 300 rupees which you have spent, and you are showing her receipts of 300 rupees which you have sent 2 weeks back. Not relevant. The period is not relevant. Your mom is asking for 300 rupees expenditure which has done today, and you are giving her invoices of expenditure which has happened 2 weeks back. Not relevant. So your evidence, the documentary proof, number one, should be relevant. Number two, should be reliable. So do you understand the difference between kacha invoice and pakka invoice? Kacha invoice is an invoice which is given on a paper where there's no invoice number written, there's no name of the store written, it's just written cash, 200 rupees spent. That is kacha invoice. Another one is pakka invoice, concrete invoice, which is a valid invoice. Now, if you give a kacha invoice to your mom, then your mom will say, I don't trust in this invoice. This invoice might have been generated by you because there's no name of the vendor, shop, etc. You went to a proper mart, I mean Big Apple or some regulated place. You should have given, you should have gotten the invoice of a proper format. The format of invoice which you are giving to me is not correct. So your mom might say that I am not relying on your evidence. So second feature of your evidence is reliability. Your evidence should be reliable. It should not be just any piece of paper or document which you are just giving for formality's sake. No, your invoice should be reliable. Number three, your invoice should be adequate. So for example, you spent 300 rupees and you gave invoices for 290 rupees. Your invoices were not adequate. They were not sufficient. Your invoices should be sufficient. So auditor has to see these three things in an invoice or a document or a evidence, that it should be, number one, relevant. It should be relevant to the expenditure which has been incurred. Number two, reliable. Number three, adequate or sufficient. So RRA, relevant, reliable, adequate. Please remember these three words. They are very, very important from a evidence standpoint. Evidence has got these three elements. Evidence should be relevant, reliable, adequate. Relevant, reliable, adequate. Every evidence which you give during audit, which you as an auditor receive during audit and as a client you give during audit, that evidence should be relevant, reliable, adequate. Adequate means sufficient, which means one and the same thing. So these are the three important aspects of auditing. Your evidence should be reliable, relevant and adequate. Then it is analytical, critical, investigative, review of systems of accounting and internal controls. Now you have to be very, very sharp and very, very critical, very, very diligent while conducting an audit. Audit is not just a random affair. It is a very serious affair and you have to do it very, very thoughtfully. So your review should be analytical, which means you have to analyze all the aspects of the transactions. You cannot just so I'll give you an example, a very simple example. Suppose a company has given 50,000 rupees to a consultant for a consultation fees. You ask the company, please give me the invoice. They hand over the invoice of 50,000 to you. You will have a look at the invoice and say, yes, this invoice looks okay, because it's a consultant, it's a legal consultant, and you have incurred 50,000 rupees, which you have debited to your profit and loss account. Perfect. Your invoice is perfect. Three elements are there in your invoice. Number one, it is relevant, it is reliable, and it is adequate. But as an auditor, I have to be doubly sure of every transaction. So I'll employ one more check. I'll go to the TDS return of that particular client and check whether TDS has been deducted for this particular consultant or not. If TDS has been deducted under section 194J, which is for professional services, if TDS has been deducted for that particular consultant and the line item entry is there in TDS as well, I'll be sure, I have doubly checked it. Only invoice is not sufficient. You have to doubly check every transaction in a way that it establishes your belief that yes, transaction is okay. So the examination is analytical, critical, and investigative. You have to really analyze the transaction in all round effect. You cannot just analyze the transaction from one respect and leave the other respect. So these three elements of auditing are there. Audit should be analytical, critical, and investigative. Then the information audited may be financial or non-financial. Information can be financial, information can be non-financial information. So guys, many informations are analyzed by the auditor which are non-financial. You would say, sir, why would we analyze non-financial information? Guys, we would analyze non-financial information to analyze whether, for example, whether the company is facing a going concern problem or not. So going concern problem means if the company has filed a petition to the High Court that we are going to wind up in next 2 years, then it is a non-financial information. It might not impact your financial statements a lot at this point in time, but in future they are going to impact your financial statements. And you as an auditor should give this information about going concern of a company to your shareholders. From a shareholder standpoint, current year's profit is not as relevant as a qualification for going concern, because shareholders will then be jittery about their investment. So any kind of information, be it financial or non-financial, can be audited during audit. Evaluation of information should be systematic and in scientific manner. The information should be given in a systematic and a scientific manner. It should not be haphazard. You should audit all the account heads properly in a scientific and a systematic manner, one by one, one by one. Then the auditor should be. Now one feature of audit is that auditor, the focus is auditor, because auditor cannot be any Tom, Dick and Harry. Auditor has to be a competent person, independent person, qualified person, having the necessary qualification and certificate of practice. We've already discussed these features of an auditor. He has to be competent, which means he should have qualification, skill. Number two, he should have certificate of practice. He should have a recognized degree. These are important elements of an auditor. Then it ensures reliability of information, authenticity of information. You have to ensure reliability and authenticity of the financial information which is given in the statements, financial statements, which an auditor is auditing. So these are the features of auditing. Very, very important words, guys. I emphasize on words for all theory subjects. Why? Because in theory you cannot remember the entire sentence for sure, but you can remember the words. So for example, evidence is directly connected with 3 words. Evidence has to be relevant, it has to be reliable, and it has to be adequate. Similarly, audit has to be analytical, critical, and investigative. So these words are to be remembered with respect to features of auditing. Okay, sir, got it. Next, what is the nature and scope of audit? So first of all, audit is not restricted to only financials and accounting records. Simple. Audit can be of anything and everything. For example, cost audit, managerial performance, which is known as management audit, internal audit, energy audit, GST audit, tax audit, etc. So whatever focus an act has, so GST Act has GST indirect taxes focus, income tax has direct taxes focus. Whatever focus an act has, that act will evolve an audit with respect to that focus. So there are various type of audit. It is not restricted to only financial statements. Then number 2 will be, there are standards for doing audit, how to do audit, how to cull out information, pull out the necessary information, how to prepare a documentation file for yourself. All these things are governed by standards, and in our case the standards are given by Institute of Chartered Accountants of India as well as Institute of Cost and Management Accountants of India. Standards have been given by both of these organizations. In our course, standards are not there. You just have to remember the names. I am repeating this thing again and again in inter. But in final, when you will study cost audit, we will study all these standards in in-depth detail. All right, sir. So the auditor should be a competent person. He has to be well qualified and he has to be independent of the client. Then auditor is expected to exercise due diligence and professional care. So obviously auditor has to be diligent in his work. He has to be careful in his work while performing any audit. Scope limitations. Auditor is not expected to perform duties which are beyond his scope. So whatever scope is there, beyond his scope, he is not expected to perform his duty. For example, an auditor is not supposed to verify whether an engineering good is properly prepared by the company or not. If work in progress is there, what percentage of work in progress is there? Auditor is not technically an expert in gauging what is the percentage of completion of work in progress. Work in progress completion percentage has to come from an engineer, has to come from a subject matter expert. Auditor cannot verify what is the percentage of completion of work in progress. It has to be done by a competent person. Auditor cannot value a building. So if it's a matter of valuation, there has to be a valuer. Auditor cannot value a building. So auditor cannot be expected to do things which are beyond his scope. Number 2, auditor is not supposed to prepare financial statements. Now this is a very tricky one, that while conducting audit and cost audit as well as financial audit, you are being paid for auditing, which means verification. You cannot prepare cost accounts or prepare financial accounts. So as a teacher, when I give you test, You are supposed to write the test and I am supposed to check the test. Suppose if I write the test, if you write the test and I ask you to check it yourself, then how many marks will you score out of 10? Sir, I think we'll score 12 out of 10, because we'll give 2 marks for our writing also. Sir, our writing is mashallah, and that writing is superb. So sir, we'll give 2 marks for writing and 10 marks for whatever correct answer we have written. We'll give us 12 out of 10. Absolutely right. So an auditor cannot write his cost accounts, cannot write cost accounts of the company or financial accounts of the company, because if he writes them himself, if he makes books of accounts himself and then audits it himself, then he will not be able to find out the mistakes in the cost accounts and cost records. This is known as self-review threat. So auditor cannot be asked to self-review his own things. So auditor is not supposed to prepare financial statements. Number 3, auditor can only draw a reasonable conclusion. Auditor is not supposed to give absolute or certain assurance. So what is absolute assurance? Absolute assurance is 100% assurance. And what is reasonable conclusion? Reasonable conclusion is high but not 100%. High but not 100%. So an auditor has to draw a reasonable conclusion, which means he is not supposed to audit the entire 100% of the transaction of an organization, because it is not practically possible given the timeline. There are strict timelines for audit. It is not practically possible for an auditor to review the entire 100% of the transaction. So sir, what will auditor do? Auditor will pick samples from the entire transaction. So if there are 1000 transactions in a company, then auditor will pick say 100 or 200 transaction, top 100 200 transaction, and he will audit only those transactions. So auditor will give you a reasonable certainty, reasonable conclusion. Reasonable means it is high but not 100%. Sir, what is high? High means 70% or 80%. So auditor will give you 70%, 80% of assurance, but he will not give you absolute assurance 100% that the accounts are 100% correct. No auditor in the world can give you this kind of an assurance. Then SA 200A on objectives and scope of audit of financial statement enumerates the scope of an audit of financial statements if the terms of engagement. So what are the scope of audit? They are given by SA 200A. If the terms of engagement restrict the prescribed scope of an audit, auditor should mention it in the report. So if management comes up and they tell the auditor that, see auditor, you are not supposed to audit these account heads. Why? Auditor will ask, why should I not? Because these are forming part of financial statements. Why should I not? Management is saying, because it's our call. We are instructing you not to audit these account heads. What should auditor do? Should auditor fight with the management with a punching box, with a punching bag and a hand, gloves, those punching gloves, big thick punching gloves, and punch the CFO of the company? Should auditor do this? Answer is a big no. Auditor has to follow instructions of the management and just write this aspect in the auditor's report. He will start his report by saying, at the very outset, I am culling out the scope limitations which has been imposed on me by the management, and management has restricted me from doing audit of repair and maintenance account, legal and professional account, and employee wages account. So I have not audited these 3 accounts. Apart from these 3 accounts, I have audited the entire financial statements. Auditor should write these limitations. If management has imposed these restrictions or limitations, auditor should write them in its auditor's report. Then there's a case study which I'm sure you are going to do yourself. I'm not harping upon case studies because we need to finish the concepts first. All right, now comes the relationship and distinction between accounting and auditing. Guys, accounting is to be done by the management. Please have this thing clear in your mind. You are not supposed to write accounts of a particular of any company. Although in practical world, practically chart accountants, cost accountants sometimes create accounts of those companies and then audit them. However, this is a bad practice. If you become, whenever you become a cost accountant, and if you choose to have certificate of practice, please do not prepare cost accounts of a particular client. You just have to do cost audit. And if you become a chartered accountant, then please don't make books of accounts of clients. No, we need not give this service to the client free of cost. This is a valuable service which should be given by some other cost accountant, and it should be paid for adequately by the company. This is not a free service, construction of accounts. Accounts is management's responsibility. It should be done by management. Auditor's responsibility is just to check the accounts. That's it. So what are the distinctions? It is analyze and record the events, and auditing means review those events. Then management function, it is responsibility of management, and it is responsibility of auditor to conduct audit. Of course, audit cannot be done by management, and of course accounting cannot be done by auditor. This goes hand in hand. Then record and summarize data. Accounting records and summarizes data. Evaluate the evidence which are there. Evidence again contain 3 parts, you know that. Prepare financial statements. Financial statements is responsibility of management. And prepare audit report. Audit report should be prepared by the auditor. Make financial statements assertions. Claim on correctness of financial statements. So assertion means, it's a very important technical term which you need to understand. Assertion means dawa. Dawa means claim. So management is claiming that we have fixed assets worth rupees 3000 crores and the same have been disclosed in our balance sheet. This is the claim or the dawa which management is asserting in the financial statements. As an auditor, you have to test that this dawa or this assertion is does it hold water or not? Is it on a firm ground or not, or is it just hawabazi? You have to, as an auditor, ascertain it. So management's responsibility is to create a dawa, create a claim that we have got debtors worth rupees 100 crores. We have got income worth rupees 10,000 crores. An auditor has to audit or review whether this claim made by the management is correct or not in the financial statements. So management's accounting means to create assertions in the financial statements, and auditing means determine fairness of these assertions, whether these assertions are correct or not, whether the management has accounts worth rupees fixed assets worth rupees 100 crores or not, income worth rupees 10,000 crores or not. Auditor's responsibility is to verify whether these claims are valid or not. Then distribute financial statements to the shareholders. Accounting it's management's responsibility to distribute the auditor's report to shareholders. Auditor has the responsibility of just delivering one audit report to the client or 2 audit report to the client. Client should then facilitate distribution of audit report. Then one very important difference is that accounting precedes auditing. So auditing starts where accounting ends. So auditing starts where accounting ends. Then accountant work for and under the management. An accountant is a person employed by the management. Salaries is paid by the management. So accountant is dependent on management. However, auditor is an independent person. Although auditor's salary is also given by the management, but auditor is not under an employment or under influence of the management. So the auditor is an independent person, answerable, liable to the owners and shareholders, and not just to the management. So management cannot exercise influence over the auditor. Owners exercise the influence over the auditors. Accounting is done as per the principles set by Indian accounting standards, and auditing is done as per the principles set by standards in auditing. That is the difference. One common statement: auditing and accounting are interrelated. Obviously they are related to each other. Auditing begins where accounting ends, but they are distinct from each other. So in a way we can say that they are relative as well as they are distinct from each other, because accounting is incomplete without auditing, and auditing cannot happen without accounting. So both of them are related to each other, but again their scope, their emphasis, their area of operation is absolutely different. Now the question arises, who can be the auditor? Can a graduate be an auditor? Or can a person who has done BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration, be an auditor? Can a person who's done BCom Honors be an auditor? Can a person who's done Chartered Accountancy be an auditor? Can a person who's done Company Secretaryship, can he be an auditor? Can a person who's done a CMA be an auditor? Who can be an auditor? Answer is, the person conducting an audit is known as the auditor. This is the primary definition of audit, that whoever conducts an audit is an auditor. Now, to be an auditor, the person should be professionally qualified, number one. For example, for conducting cost audit, a person should be a CMA. For conducting secretarial audit, person should be a CS. For conducting statutory audit, person should be a chartered accountant. For conducting income tax audit, person should be a chartered accountant. For conducting GST audit, person can be a chartered accountant as well as a cost accountant. So first and foremost requirement of becoming an auditor, you should be professionally qualified. Second, he should be appointed by the board. Appointment is necessary for calling yourself as an auditor. If I have certificate of practice and if I'm a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, I don't naturally become an auditor. I will become an auditor only when some company appoints me as an auditor. Then I can say, yes, I'm an auditor of this particular company. So second prerequisite of becoming an auditor is that you should be appointed as an auditor by the board of directors. Yes, sir. Then what are the qualities of an auditor? What are the things which are necessary for an auditor to become an auditor and to be an auditor? What are the ingredients of a good auditor? Number one, he should be knowledgeable, of course, and of various discipline, not only accounting, but he should be good at economics. He should be good at life sciences. He should be good at science because there are certain clients which deal with science related products. He should be good at insurance, business, banking, regulation which you are studying in your accounts. He should be good at partnership. He should be aware about partnership law. He should be aware about companies law, income tax law, anything and everything, whatever is connected to his field, he should be good at it. So number one is knowledge. Number two, integrity, honesty and objectivity. Now, as a human being, my behavior and nature matters the most in an audit. If as a human being, I have always been a person who lies a lot, who tries to trick people, who tries to be over smart and over clever and trick people and extract benefit out of them. If I am that kind of a person, as a human being, then even if I'm a chartered accountant, I'm a cost accountant, I will not be a good auditor. Because good auditor has to possess honesty, integrity and objectivity. Integrity means he should be person of value, person of beliefs. He cannot be driven away by any lalach, any kind of money, any kind of bribe. Should not be able to drive him. His driving factor should be his values, his ethics. That is known as integrity. Second is honesty. He has to be honest. He has to be bold. He has to be confident enough to raise voice against if anything is going wrong. He has to be honest. Number three, he has to be objective. Objective means he should understand and able to comprehend what is wrong and right, and he should be able to communicate in as many words what is wrong and right. He should not be mincing in his words. Mincing words is the worst thing that auditor can do to himself. He should be straightforward, point blank towards his goals. If anything is right, he should tell that it's right, and if anything is wrong, he should tell that it's wrong. So he has to be he should have integrity, honesty and objectivity. Auditor has to have these three aspects apart from obviously the knowledge. Number third, he should be aware about general principles of law. Of course, the law which are governing that particular country or that particular company. He should be aware about those laws like Companies Act in India, Income Tax Act in India, GST in India. An auditor should be able to understand the law and apply it for the client. Then he should be understanding the special features of a particular company. So for example, if you are going to do audit of an insurance company, as an auditor you should be aware about IRDA, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority law, because that law is prime law for regulating insurance companies. So you should be aware about that law. So he should be able to comprehend the special features of particular laws. Then he should have basic human qualities like politeness, courtesy, professionalism. You have to be polite. Again, behavior related factors. You have to be polite, you have to be courteous and you have to be professional if you want to be a good auditor. So the next topic is distinguish between audit and investigation. So guys, many a times we use these two words interchangeably, audit and investigation. Sometimes we say that audit is an investigation and sometimes we say that investigation is audit. However, there is a thin line of difference between these two words, and these two words are not absolutely same or even similar. There is a different scope to investigation, there is a different scope to audit. Audit is done by auditor, and auditor is not supposed to do investigation. That is a very critical scope limitation of an auditor, that auditor should not do investigation. Investigation is to be done by forensics teams or investigators or some expert team which is qualified in doing investigation. Auditor should not do investigation. Now, to explain the difference between audit and investigation, let me give you a very simple example. Your mom asks you to get Maggi from the nearby store. The store dealer gives you top ramen instead of Maggi. You wanted a Nestle Maggi, yellow color pack and Maggi written over it. And you wanted those noodles only, and the storekeeper gave you top ramen noodles. He tells you it is the similar thing. Please take this, I don't have Maggi. You come back home and your mom says, no, this is not Maggi, this is top ramen. Please go and change it. So while you are doing verification of whether it is a top ramen thing or a Maggi, what do you see? You see their texture, you see their difference in their colors, you see their manufacturers, you see their prices, you see all those things which prima facie tells you that this is top ramen and this is not Maggi. And that is how you are verifying whether that particular packet is Maggi or top ramen. Now, next day your mom again asks you to get Maggi. You go on in the same store and you ask for Maggi, and you tell the store manager that I need Maggi, and the store manager tells you I don't have Maggi, you please take top ramen. You again are perplexed because your mom has asked for Maggi only. You tell the shopkeeper, no sir, this is not Maggi, I want only Maggi, I don't want top ramen. Please exchange this, please take it back and give me Maggi. He gives you a packet of Maggi. Now, when you are coming back from that particular shop, you observe that the Maggi packet is looking a little weird. It is not the normal yellow color which is there in Maggi. It is a different yellow color. The font in which it is written is different. So you suspect whether it is original Maggi or some duplicate Maggi. You come back home and your mom again fears the same thing, because even mom feels that this Maggi there's something weird in this Maggi. There's something weird in this Maggi, and your mom thinks that no, this is not the original Maggi which we eat normally. This is a duplicate version of Maggi. Now when you go back to the store and tell the store manager that this is a duplicate Maggi, he would claim no, it is not a duplicate Maggi. If you want to verify whether it is original Maggi or duplicate Maggi, please go to the factory and see whether the Nestle factory is producing this Maggi or not, where we are procuring it from. Can you do that? Answer is no, no one will allow you inside Nestle Maggi factory. You have to take assistance of police in this case. You have to take assistance of expert in this case. So while the earlier confusion which you had between top ramen and Maggi was a prima facie audit, the next confusion, whether it is original Maggi or duplicate Maggi, it is not audit, it is investigation. So investigation is not done by auditors, it is done by specialist people like police. Police is authorized to do investigation. You will report this matter to nearest police station, or you will report this matter to ISI or some food authority of India, and you will complain against the Maggi manufacturers to them. And then they will initiate an investigation based on the sample given by you. So investigation is with a mindset that something is wrong. Auditing is with a mindset that nothing is wrong, everything is right. It's just that you need the right thing. That's it. You have taken a wrong thing, you need a right thing. That's it. There's nothing hanky-panky in audit. However, investigation, there is something weird. There's something hanky-panky. There's something else going on. Some malefied activity is going on. So this is the broad difference between investigation and audit. Audit is prima facie checking whether the transaction is right or wrong. Investigation is in-depth checking whether the transaction is correct or not. It is detailed examination of the transaction, whether it's right or wrong. And it involves forensics activities also. It would not be done by any layman, any person, any professional. It has to be done by specialist professionals who are expert in forensics audit. That is known as investigation. Now let's see what is the difference. Now the objective of audit is to express an opinion. However, investigation is not to express an opinion, but to ascertain a fact. We need to know whether the Maggi is original or not. That is investigation. However, audit is to express an opinion whether this Maggi is right or wrong, whether top ramen is good or bad. Express an opinion. Number two, audit has a wide scope. audit includes a lot of things, and audit generally includes all the accounts statements of financial statements, all the account heads of financial statements. However, investigation is sometimes limited to a particular period or area. We need to investigate only with respect to the fraud which happened in, say, Adidas in, say, 2017. So you are referring to a particular event, you are referring to a particular year. That is investigation. Investigation might not happen for the entire year, or it might not happen for each year subsequently. Then audit is to verify the truth and fairness, and investigation is for a special purpose, that is investigating on behalf of incoming partner or ascertaining some fact. A special purpose is there in investigation. However, in audit, it is only concerned with truth and fairness of the financial statements. Audit is done as per generally accepted auditing principles. However, the investigation procedures are much wider, much larger than audit procedures, because investigation includes forensic also. So you must have seen CID, where investigation happens. There's Inspector Pradyuman, there is Daya, and they investigate in depth. That is investigation of financial statements. An auditor will evaluate the accounting records predominantly based on persuasive evidence, and in investigation the evidence which are looked at are conclusive evidence. So in case of audit, you are morely relying on the look and feel of a particular transaction. You see their packet, top ramen, color, font, size, etc. So you are just gathering persuasive evidence. And in case of investigation, when you have to ascertain whether the Maggi is manufactured by right person or not, in that case you need conclusive evidence. You have to go to the factory and see whether the right factory is producing Maggi or not. So conclusive evidence versus persuasive evidence. Persuasive means 80% assurity. Conclusive means 100% assurity. Auditor is skeptical but not suspicious. So there's no suspicious element in auditor, means he's coming from a positive mindset. He's not coming in a negative mindset. However, investigator has got a negative mindset and he has suspicion in his mind. He feels that something wrong has happened, and that's why investigation is taking place. And usually investigation is not a normal affair. It happens only when something suspective happens or something bad happens. So investigation is with respect to suspicion. It has negative mindset. Auditing is a routine exercise that it happens annually, and investigation might spread over a gap period. I mean, it might happen after 2 years, after 5 years, or after 10 years, or never in a company's history. That is also possible. So it happens longer than 1 year. Next, aspects to be covered in audit. This is very simple, guys. I'm skipping those topics which are simple, which are easy to understand. Please, you have to do those topics yourself, and significance also is easy. Now we come on to the very important aspect, advantages of audit of financial statements. What are the advantages? What benefits would a person derive from auditing of financial statements? And related topic, what are the limitations of audit? What are the things which an auditor does not see, or which an auditor lacks? Those things are to be kept in mind while reading an audit report. So first of all, what are the advantages of audit? It protects interest of various stakeholders. So various stakeholders who have stake in company, like shareholders, like creditors, like bank, loan, income tax department, because income tax department has to collect revenue from the company, GST department, all those are stakeholders in the company. So to protect the interest of various stakeholders, we need audit of financial statements. Then moral check on the employees. Employees will do things in a better way if they know that at the year end there will be auditors which will be coming in the office. So moral check on the employees. Employees will do things properly. Then employees will remain alert and vigilant, because employees will know that someone will check their work. So they will be more vigilant. They will be more alert. Then audit is considered to be more reliable by different cadres of government. Audited accounts. If you furnish audited accounts to government organization, they are much more relieved. They are much more satisfied. Then wastage and losses are discovered, and audited accounts are more reliable, useful under corporate restructuring exercises. Bank, financial institution and government require audited financial statement before granting any financial assistance. Any loan is required. If your company needs a loan, audited financial statements are required. Audited accounts taken more helpful for settlement of accounts. If you have to settle someone's account, I mean, you have to, you are 3 partners and one partner is outgoing. Then to settle the outgoing partner's account, audited financial statements will be used and not the unaudited one. So these are the advantages of financial audit of financial statement. Now guys, there are certain inherent limitations of audit. Please don't think that audit is a foolproof method of ensuring that whatever is there in the financial statement is absolutely correct. It is not foolproof, because as we have studied earlier, it is not 100% scrutiny of accounts. It is just a 70% or 80% scrutiny of accounts. 20% scope of error still remains in audit. So what are the limitations of audit? Audit is not an assurance as to future viability of an organization. If an audited financial statement is audited by, say, a big four, the most reliable or the most big auditors of the country, and they have got very stringent procedures, very strong, powerful procedures. Of course, barring the ignoring the events which happened in past, I'm just ignoring them for a second, but they are the most strong audit policies and audit standards developers in India, and they have got very stringent softwares, very technical softwares which they employ. So if you see a balance sheet which is signed by a partner of say KPMG or a Deloitte, do you think that that company it is an assurance that that company is a superb company and it will be a very, very financially viable company? Answer is a no. Remember, audit is done for past and not for future. So if they have audited the financial statements for past, then that means that that past year has been recorded properly in the financial statements. It is not a guarantee to future. Audit is not a guarantee that company will do well in future as well, because audit is post-mortem. Then next, it does not guarantee that all material misstatements will be detected. There is no surety that all the material misstatement will be detected because of sample testing. We only test samples in an audit. We do not do audit of the complete transactions. So you only test samples. So it is not a guarantee that all the material misstatement will be detected. There might be some misstatements which are not detected. There is a possibility because of test nature, because the evidence are persuasive and not conclusive. Remember, we had a discussion whereby difference between investigation and audit revealed that audit is persuasive, investigation is conclusive. Persuasive means 70% assurance, conclusive means 100% assurance. Then inherent limitations of internal controls. Internal controls are controls that are imbibed by the management in the organization to ensure that management is working fine, organization is working fine. Auditors sometimes rely on these internal controls and do not do in-depth checking. And if these internal controls are not doing well, then auditor's report which is based on these internal controls will be faulty. So inherent limitations of internal control indirectly impacts the audit opinion also, because audit opinion will be faulty if internal controls are weak. Then professional skepticism. Sometimes the auditor is not able to keep utmost vigilant behavior, utmost professional behavior, utmost due diligence behavior, because at the end of the day he is also a human being. So risk of fraud or error or reliability of management representation are certain things which jeopardizes the opinion of the auditor. So professional skepticism might be less sometimes because of human element. Then materiality. Auditor only reports on material transaction. Material means most important. Now the less important transactions are generally not looked at by the auditor. What if those less important transactions have got the error? Then we stand a risk of having a wrong audit opinion. So these are the inherent limitations of audit. So the next topic is fundamental concepts of auditing, true and fair view, materiality and accounting policies. So guys, this word has been recurring in our conversations a lot, which is true and fair view. So the objective of an auditor is to express his opinion on the truthfulness and fairness of the financial statements. Now, what do you mean by truthfulness and fairness? Let me give you another word. True and correct. Now, what is the difference between true and fair and true and correct? And why in auditing we are using the word true and fair and not true and correct? What is the difference? Let me tell you the difference in brief. Correctness means that you are evidencing or vouching for the 100% correctness of financial statements. And true and fairness means that you are giving a reasonable assurance, which is 70% assurance on the correctness of a particular thing. So when you give an absolute assurance, means I've checked 100% of the transactions and 100% of the transactions are correct. Then you say you have given a true and correct view. And when you say that you've not checked 100% and you've picked a set of samples through which you have analyzed your given your opinion, then you say that you've given a true and fair view. Fair means not absolute, not 100%, and correct means absolutely 100% correct. The phrase true and fair in auditor's report signifies that auditor is required to express his opinion as to whether state of affairs and the results of the entity are truly and fairly represented by the accounts under audit. This requires that auditor should examine the accounts with view to verify that assets are neither overvalued nor undervalued. No material assets are omitted. Now please see the use of word material. Material means important, which means that if some very small or unimportant assets are omitted, that's okay. It is none of the botheration of the auditor. So no material assets are omitted. The charge, if any, on assets are disclosed. Material liability should not be omitted. Again, use of word material, which means some small immaterial liability may be omitted. It's okay. Auditor will not bother about it. The financial statements have been prepared as per the applicable financial reporting framework. Financial reporting framework means the law and the formats which are prescribed by the law to prepare the financial statements. In India, this relevant law is Companies Act 2013. So you have to verify that the financial statements have been prepared as per the applicable financial reporting framework. All unusual, exceptional or non-recurring items have been disclosed separately. Anything which is unusual, anything which is non-recurring should be disclosed separately. What constitutes true and fair is a matter of auditor's judgment. Now this is a very important thing, that auditor should decide what thing is important and what thing is not important. It depends on judgment of the auditor. Because if auditor says that this particular thing is important and this is not important, some other person should not be able to question that judgment of the auditor. So it is a matter of auditor's judgment in particular circumstances of a case. True and correct view. Now what is true and correct view? It signifies absolute assurance, 100% accuracy. However, true and fair view denotes reasonable assurance, that is less than 100% accuracy. In India, most of the audits requires the auditors to give a true and fair view. There is only one audit, which is income tax audit, which requires you to give a true and correct view. And there may be audit like GST audit, which may be requiring a true and correct view. But statutory audit asks you to give true and fair view. Cost audit also requires you to give true and fair view. So this is the difference between true and fair view and true and correct view. Now, we have been talking about this word a lot, which is materiality, and I have been in layman terms telling you that materiality means importance, anything which is of importance. But sir, for one person one thing is important, for other person another thing is important. So for a very very poor guy, rice is very important, wheat is very important. For a rich guy, BMW is very important, his bungalow is very important. So importance is subjective, it changes from person to person. So in financial statement, how would you determine that whether repair and maintenance of 1 crore rupees is important or not, or whether legal and professional expenses which are incorrectly stated by rupees 10 lakh is important or not? How would you ascertain, sir? A very simple criteria of judging whether a thing is material or not. Auditor has to think whether this incorrect thing in the financial statement, if disclosed to the stakeholders, would they change their mind? Would they take a different decision than what they are taking right now? So for example, if revenue of 1 crore rupees has been omitted from the financial statement, then auditor should think whether the revenue authorities would compute a tax in a different manner if 1 crore revenue is there. Answer is a big yes. Revenue authorities will be jittery if 1 crore revenue is missing in the financial statements. So this becomes material. So materiality means a thing which will impact the decision making of a particular stakeholder. Any stakeholder, shareholder, creditor, debtor, Government of India, GST department, indirect tax department, FEMA, RBI, any stakeholder. That is the criteria of materiality. So now this concept is applied by the auditor both at the planning stage and performing stage. Material misstatement either individually or put together may influence the decision of the users. Now the concept is applied by the auditor. Auditor applies this concept at planning stage and performing stage, because auditor has to decide whether a particular account head is to be audited or not, and this decision is taken on the basis of materiality. If account head is above the materiality limit, then this account will be selected for scrutiny, otherwise the account will not be selected for scrutiny. Material misstatement, either individually or put together, may influence the decision of the users of financial statements. Now materiality means that if this misstatement is allowed to be put in the financial statement, that it will influence means it will change the decision of the users of financial statement, then it is material. Materiality is determined on the following factors. Now there are certain factors on which materiality is determined. Individual, you will see individual amounts whether they are material to you or not. So for example, a payment of 1000 rupees may be material in small business, but even 1 lakh rupees could be material for big business. So 1000 rupees for a small business is a big amount, it is a material amount. For big business, 1 lakh rupees is also not a material amount. So if there is a misstatement to the extent of 1 lakh rupees in big business, auditor might choose to ignore this qualification. However, in a small business, auditor will give this qualification if even 1000 rupees error is there. What to talk about 1 lakh rupees error? Then aggregate. Now you also have to see whether the aggregate of all the misstatements put together become material or not. So for example, if you get a 1000 rupees error, you don't have to ignore it saying ये तो बहुत छोटा सा amount है. You don't have to ignore it. You have to write it on a audit notebook or in a Excel sheet. You have to total all the errors which have been done during the year, and if those errors are above materiality, so suppose 1000, 1000, 1000, 1000, many 1000s are there and they total up to 10 lakh rupees, then what will you do? You will definitely highlight this error in the audit report. So if the individual amounts aggregated together are above the materiality threshold, then they become material. Next, legal considerations. Now sometimes they are statutory or legal considerations which are there, which makes a particular item relevant. Although in monetary terms they are not relevant, but because of the legal restriction of statutory requirements, it makes that particular transaction relevant. For example, where the terms of appointment of whole-time director are not according to law. So law has prescribed the remuneration of the director. If the remuneration is not according to Companies Act 2013, then what will happen? The remuneration paid to him is material item, even if financial implication is not much. Even if the amount is minuscule, but since you have defalcated in the Companies Act 2013, it's a big problem. You as an auditor have to report it in the financial audit report. Then legal definition. It may be defined or described in law itself. So if there are certain errors which are defined in law, that these errors are to be disclosed mandatorily by the auditor, irrelevant of the amount. So for example, while doing tax audit, any TDS default is to be highlighted, whether it's of 1 rupee or 1 crore rupee. While during the statutory audit, you have to disclose the statutory dues which remain unpaid, like excise duty, like income tax, whether it is 1 rupee or whether it is 1 crore rupee. So if it is legally written somewhere that this item is material, then you have to treat it as material, whether the amount involved is 1 rupee or 1 crore rupee. That transaction becomes material if it is legally written somewhere. Then relative overall impact. You have to study the relative overall impact of the transaction also. So for example, if you have revenues of say 1000 crores, in those revenue there's a error in 1 lakh rupee of revenue, then 1 lakh rupee as compared to 1000 is too minuscule to be highlighted. So if your errors are relatively small, 1 lakh rupees in itself is a big amount, but as in relation to the overall scheme of things, it's too small. In that scenario, you may choose to report that particular thing or not report that particular thing. Then qualitatively, qualitative impact is very important impact. Qualitative impact means that financially it might not impact you, but in essence it is impacting you, like your going concern assumption is getting failed if you are not disclosing this particular transaction. So for example, if a company has applied to High Court for a winding up proceedings, then financially this year is okay, financially there's no impact in this year, but in future going concern assumption is at default. In this situation, you have to disclose this item qualitatively and not quantitatively in your auditor's report. Then insignificant quantities but special context. This is a very important thing, guys. It may be of insignificant quantity otherwise, but material in special circumstances. For example, rounding off to nearest rupee of fraction of 666 in the computer software. It may be material in future due to cumulative effect, even if insignificant now. So if you keep on rounding up, then this amount will become big in future. If you have already feeden up in the accounts in the software that 66 should be taken as 0.67, then it will have a triple down effect, which means it will multiply as it goes forward. So this is, although individually insignificant, but it will have a large impact in future. So this is a material item, even if individually it is an insignificant item. So these are the materiality considerations. You have to really learn them well, because materiality is not a amount thing. It may be a qualitative thing, it may be a cumulative amount thing, it may be a legal thing. So many things denote materiality. Materiality is not one thing, but many things denote materiality. But ultimate aim is that if the stakeholder's decision is altered by this transaction, then that transaction is material. This is the ultimate threshold which is to be seen by the auditor while computing materiality. Okay, accounting concerns. I am leaving accounting assumptions and accounting principles, because these are too basic. You have to of course read them because they come in examination quite often, and these are the questions which we are skipping. Now we come on to the last aspect of our chapter, which is types of audit, and a very important aspect, guys, because in examination this topic along with miscellaneous audit, which we are going to do in our last chapter, these two topics are frequently recurring in the examination. So this topic is really an important topic. What are the types of audit? Okay, so as I've already told you that audits may vary from their perspective in which audit is being done. So for example, an Income Tax Act would want an audit which caters to only income tax avoidance transactions which are there in the financial statements. Cost audit would focus on the cost records wherever there's an error in preparation of cost records. GST audit will focus on the transactions where GST are applicable and GST is not appropriately levied, or the rates where rates are not appropriately levied. So depending upon what is the focus of a particular audit, audit may be categorized in different category. So now we are going to study what kind of audits are prevalent in India and entire world, and some are relevant to statutory provisions, some legal aspects, and some are not relevant to legal aspects. Some audits are done just for our benefit, and some are done because we have a danda from statutory authorities. That's why some audits are done. But there's a mixture of audit, whole gamut of audit, which are there in India as well as abroad, and we are going to study what are those types of audits. All right, so organization structure. On the basis of organization structure, how are audits organized? On the basis of kind of organizations which they cater to, the audit can be divided into three parts: voluntary audit, private audit, statutory audit, and government audit. Guys, voluntary audit or private audit is audit of entities like sole proprietorship, partnership firm, LLP, NGO. Statutorily, there is no law to get these firms audited. Income Tax Act, yes, prescribes audit beyond a particular threshold, section 44, but otherwise there's no law which prescribes audit for a sole proprietorship, partnership, LLP, NGO. So these come under the category of voluntary audit. Voluntary means suo moto. Suo moto means on your own will. If you want to get audit done, please get audit done. If you don't want to get audit done, don't get audit done. This is known as voluntary audit or private audit. It is not bound by any legal constraint. It is not bound by any law, by any act. These audits are audits which are done suo moto, for your own purpose. There is no binding authority which is requiring you to do these audits. These are known as voluntary audit. Number two, statutory audit. Statutory audit are prescribed by some act like Companies Act, like Income Tax Act, GST Act, and these are necessarily to be done for those particular aspects which the act requires you to do. For example, Companies Act prescribes you to get your books audited if you are a company registered with the Companies Act mandatorily by a chartered accountant, and a cost accountant if you are eligible for getting cost audit done. So statutory audit is relevant to particular act or particular legislation which requires you to get the audit done. Government audit is done for the government companies which are covered by which are governed by government authorities, or where there is stake of government authorities in a particular company or a particular unit. So those are government audit, and government audit is done by a CAG. There's no act to it, but CAG governs the audit of a government company. CAG appoints the auditors, and CAG fetches the report of a government audit. So on the basis of organization structure, what kind of organization are you? We have these three types of audit. Now, objective. What do you want to audit? Whether you want to audit financial statements, cost statements, internal controls, legal compliances, Companies Act compliances, GST compliances, Income Tax Act compliances. Depending upon what is your objective, there are several types of audit. Number one, independent financial audit, which is focused for financial statements, and of course a chartered accountant is authorized to do financial audit. Internal audit, which is focused on operations of an entity plus compliances with law. Both things are there in internal audit. Cost audit is concerned with auditing the cost records of a particular company, so that is cost audit. Management audit is concerned with the audit of decision making of a management. Decision making, that is the purpose of management audit. Tax audit is relevant for Income Tax Act and ensuring whether any tax avoidance has happened or not. Secretarial audit is for secretarial books. Now, company secretaries are required to maintain books of accounts of a particular company which are relevant to secretarial records, which means that board minutes, register of meetings, annual general meeting, whatever legal formalities are there in annual general meeting, then the resolutions which are passed, copy of resolutions, all these things are to be required to be prepared and kept by a company secretary, and company secretary is authorized to conduct the secretarial audit of a particular company. So that is secretarial audit. Forensic audit, as I have already discussed, investigation. If some fraud has taken place in a particular company, or some cash embezzlement, or some siphoning off of assets have taken place in a particular company, which are not normal accounting frauds, but these are criminal frauds where some kind of net worth is eroded of the shareholders. In those cases, forensic audit are ordered, and these focus on a particular fact or a particular pattern or a particular area to investigate upon that particular area. Then information security audit, this is like audit of data. You have data secured in your drives, in your hard drives, in your servers, your Google drives. So company have huge amount of data within them, and to ensure that this data is not leaked, this data is not corrupt, this data is not being transferred for some bad purpose, information security audit is done by companies. Then social audit. Now, giving back to society is one of the very important elements which has also been recognized by the Companies Act 2013, whereby a principle of 2% of profit, net profit, has been allocated to CSR activities. Social audit means getting an audit done of a particular organization from the view whether that organization is giving back to society appropriately or not. Whether that organization is giving its best to protect the resources of the society like air, water and soil, whether that particular aspect is taken care of by the auditor, by the company or not. That aspect is focused on social audit. Then environment audit. Environment audit is particularly related to environment in which organization is working at, and whether the company is polluting environment or not, protecting environment or not from any of its waste, hazardous products or not. So this is environment audit. Then performance audit. Of course, every company needs performance. Performance include two things. One, efficiency. You should be efficient in your performance, and second is effectiveness. You should be productive in your performance. So performance audit means an external third party will come in the organization and it will check whether the resources are fully exploited to the best possible use or not, and whether the performance of the company is best or not. This is known as performance audit. Then comes propriety audit. Propriety audit is nothing but prudence audit. Prudence audit means, I'll give you an example to explain propriety audit. You go to a private company board of directors have ordered glasses worth rupees 50,000 each for board meeting proceedings to drink water. They want crystal glasses which are imported specially from Italy, and they will cost 50,000 rupees per glass, which means a set of 6 glasses will come for 3 lakh rupees. Now tell me something. If the company furnishes you the invoice, if the company deducts TDS properly, if the company shows you the bank statement through which payment is done, company shows you that bank statement appropriately, would you raise any finger on the company? Answer is no if it is a private company. However, if same expenditure is happened in a government company and you find invoice, TDS and everything else in place, even then you will raise finger on the government company, because government company includes public funds. Since government company includes public funds, you cannot afford to have imprudent expenses. Prudent means rational. Prudence means to the best interest of public. So in case of CAG audit, government audit, that audit is propriety audit. Propriety means samajhdari. Samajhdari means rational application of mind, justification. That is known as propriety. And if government is not prudent in its spending, then auditor will report that particular spending in its auditor's report. So propriety audit is government audit, which is CAG audit, CAG audit, and it refers to prudence of a particular person who's doing the expenditure, and a person should behave responsibly if public money is involved in this particular entity. Then operational audit. Operational audit means you are trying to do audit of the operations of a company, which means that whether all the operations are completed properly, adequately or not, and whether profits are generated from that operations adequately or not. I'll give you an example. So a company purchases raw material 1 kg in the morning, truck comes, half truck is loaded with 1 kg, and in the evening 1 kg again comes and half truck is loaded with 1 kg of the raw material. Now as an auditor, I would go and I would tell them, why are you buying half of the truck in the morning and the evening? You should buy the entire 2 kgs one time during the day. That will save upon your transportation cost. You are currently incurring double the cost. This is operational audit. Whether the company is performing its operations to the best possible extent or not. That is the question which is asked in operational audit. And let me tell you, internal audit and operational audit are almost similar to each other. They go hand in hand, because internal audit has one of the most important component as operational audit, because operational audit is a key aspect of internal audit. So these two audits are equivalently to be seen, they are equivalently to be analyzed. Next is timing. On the basis of timing, you can classify your audit. So some audits happen at the year end, some happen during the year, some happen continuously. So depending upon what is the time period of audit, you can classify audit as continuous audit. Now I'll tell you another name of continuous audit. It is also known as concurrent audit. And this is a special feature of banks. So guys, what do bank do? Bank would grant loan to people who need loans. Now, loan is granted on the basis of credit worthiness. If you are credit worthy, if you have assets in place, full assets in place whereby you can take loan on the basis of those assets, then bank will grant loan to you. Simple. So your credit worthiness will decide whether you are eligible for loan or not. Simple. So a manager would analyze, bank manager would analyze the loan amount and would scrutinize the assets. Suppose a client's assets are worth rupees 2 crores and management says that the management of the bank says that you should give loan up to the extent of only 50%. So the loan which is to be granted to the person is 1 crores. Now manager and that person have a deal. the person says, you grant me loan for 4 crores, ignore my net worth, grant me loan for 4 crores and I will give you 10 lakhs as bribe. So if the branch manager is not an honest one, he will take bribe of 10 lakh rupees and he will grant a loan of 4 crore rupees to a person who deserves a loan of 1 crore rupees. What will happen? If such transactions are allowed to prosper, bank will subside, bank will shut down, because bank will not be credit worthy. Bank in itself will be illiquid. Bank's liquidity will be compromised. To avoid such a situation, the auditor is asked to audit the transactions in a bank in a more frequent manner, which means auditor should come every week and see the transactions which have happened in the past week, and not at the year end. Because if auditor comes at the year end, it will be too late. The bank manager would have done many such frauds. So to avoid this, concurrent audit or continuous audit is done for banks, whereby banks auditors are required to visit banks every week or every month and close the audit there and then. Next, annual audit. Annual audit means you come at year end and you finish the audit. 31st March is the last date of financial statements closure. The auditor is asked to come by, say, 10th of April and to do audit in one go. This is known as annual audit. Then interim audit. Interim audit means if the auditor says that it will be bulky for me to come at the year end and do the entire audit together. So auditor is asked to first come after 6 months and freeze the accounts of 6 months, do audit of 6 months, then come at the year end and do audit of the balance 6 months. This way, auditor will cover the entire 1 year period, and auditor will be able to do audit of the entire period, and auditor will in less amount of time, short span of time, will be able to complete audit fully. So this is the concept of interim audit. Then last is the concept of balance sheet audit, which is also known as final audit. It is, guys, similar to annual audit, whereby one time the balance sheet is closed and only one time the accounts are audited. That's it. There are no two splitting up of the accounts. There are no splitting up of the financial statements. They are audited at one go, and which is the balance sheet date. So 31st March is the closure date. Auditor would visit by, say, 5th of April or 10th of April, and that is when auditor will finish the audit. Then on the basis of scope, what is the scope? What is the extent of work which is required to be done by the auditor? On the basis of scope, we can divide the audit into 3 parts: complete audit, partial audit, and detailed audit. Complete audit means the audit is done of each and every account head and no account head is left. There can be some immaterial account heads which are very small, and those account heads may be left, but otherwise entire financial statements are audited at one go. Partial audit means that entire financial statements are not audited. Only the selective financial statements are audited. Only the selective account heads are audited. So management might choose that these are the account heads which we want to get audited, and management might get the audit done for those account heads only. This is known as partial audit. And if a auditor is doing partial audit, then one thing which is to be remembered is that auditor should mention that this audit is a partial audit in the auditor's report. Auditor should also mention that I have completed audit only of these account heads, and I have not done audit of complete balance sheet and complete financial statements. This is known as partial audit. And third, and one of the most important types of audit, are detailed audit. So guys, in case of mergers and acquisition deal, due diligence is required to be done. Due diligence means you go beyond auditing procedures. You actually employ investigation procedures and see whether everything is all right or not. Now I'll tell you what do you mean by mergers and acquisition. Now if, say, company A is being acquired by company B, company A is being acquired by company B, then company B has to pay some purchase consideration to the shareholders of company A, and that purchase consideration will be determined on the basis of financial statements of company A. Whatever assets company A would have, the purchase consideration would be equal to those assets which company A has. So now an auditor from company B will go to company A to ascertain clearly whether company A has any assets on, and what is the value of that asset, whether company A has disclosed proper liabilities or not, because net assets value will be taken as the purchase consideration. So you will determine whether assets are complete or not, and whether assets are valued properly or not. You will determine whether liabilities are disclosed properly or not, whether any liability is to be additionally put in by the company. So this is a detailed review. This is not an audit. This is a detailed review, which is also known as due diligence. So if you are doing a special purpose audit which involves a due diligence in a merger and acquisition deal, then you are categorized under the third type of audit, which is detailed audit as per the scope. So these are the types of audits, and whatever I've explained you is given in short in the subsequent paragraphs, and you can just read them, go through them, and I'm sure you are able to understand them properly. With the explanation which I've given you in brief, you will be able to understand all these aspects of audit. And please do not hesitate in writing to me through Telegram or through a comment in the YouTube itself below this video, and I'll be able to explain you in detail. If you are not able to understand a particular aspect in detail, I will definitely explain that particular aspect in the detail, and my number is available to you, and you can call me in case of any doubt in this particular chapter. So in our next session of the marathon, this is part 1. In the part 2, we will continue with our marathon and quickly revise the next chapters of your syllabus. Till that time, all the very best and happy studying.